Peace and blessings. And how's everybody doing today? Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's striving to be better as people, as humans. It's a difficult strive today, considering the environment and the climate in the world. A lot of hardship, a lot of poverty, a lot of pain, but a lot of joy, a lot of good times, a lot of happiness. And so, when it's hard, make your own moment. Make your own moment. Turn your music on. Dance if you want to, sing if you want to. Walk if you want to. Just, do it all. Find your own space, your own moment. Sometimes we have to create our own paradise. And with that said, thank everybody for being here watching my video. I thank everybody for just walking this walk with me. I definitely appreciate it, man. So many comments, inspiring, motivating, uplifting, and encouraging. And you guys are, you guys are great, man. Real talk, because you're supportive, and I definitely value that, and I appreciate that. I want to speak about me. I want to talk about who I am, because people may wonder, why does my opinion matter? Why does my perspective matter? Why does my point of view matter? What makes me different than any number of ex-convicts out here, And so I'm just going to share my life, and this will be long, so I will break it up. What I wanted to do initially was to go to the different neighborhoods, with my phone and take footage, and I promise I will do that. I don't know how to do all that editing and stuff like that. I'm still new to a lot of these devices, but I promise I will ride through and a lot of the areas I grew up in, the schools, DC, some parts of Arlington, and Alexandria Falls, Church, Maryland. Just ride around and show you all, different places that I've been around and so forth. So, I appreciate you. But right now, I just want to talk about me and give you all just a little bit of my backstory. So, born in DC, born in DC General Hospital, to my father, to my mother, in Southeast DC. My earliest memory, and I had an older brother, I have an older brother, about 1 year. My earliest memory wasn't of my parents being together. They got divorced when I was fairly young. I've heard different things. My father was a Muslim when I was born, and so was my mother, practicing. And my uncle had came from Vietnam. And he got into some situation and he wound up dead. And I believe that took a heavy toll on my father's life. That was his older brother. And so he began to, just kind of get a little loose, get a little wild. And that, I believe, kind of caused him and my mother's rift. And so they got divorced when I was young. I don't remember much about that at all. Like I said, my earliest memory was my brother, myself, and my mom living in a neighborhood in Southeast called Shipley Terrace. That's on Southern Avenue. And, I had an aunt that lived in that same neighborhood. One of my uncles' children's mother stayed in the neighborhood. Trying to think of who else. A couple of my mother's best friends stayed in the neighborhood. So, we used to go to a school, elementary school that was actually up the street from us. And there's a neighborhood that's probably about 3 blocks away called Parkland, and that's behind a neighborhood called Savannah Terrace. And so, we stayed in Parkland, and my grandmother lived in the same complex. Our aunt lived in the same complex. And so we grew up with, my mother's side of the family living fairly close to one another. Basically within walking distance. And I remember that. I remember also loved my mother, and I'm going to be transparent as best I can with respect and understanding. My mother used to drink a lot, and most of my family drank. But for some reason, I don't think she could handle her drink. She was, my aunts and them drink, my uncles and them drink, but they seemed to be able to deal with it, function jobs or whatever they were doing. They seemed like they were able to handle it. My mother, on the other hand, used to have, these blackouts. Like I remember watching her sleep, and she would sleep for long periods of time after drinking. She wasn't a loud alcoholic. She wasn't, into acting silly. She would drink and kind of go to sleep. When she drank with my family, with my aunts and them, she would get a bit, dance and stuff like that. Everybody enjoyed themselves, but, she wasn't loud and aggressive or nothing like that. So I remember her sleeping, and I remember watching her just on a couple of occasions sleep, because she didn't snore. She didn't make noise, she barely moved. So I remember one morning just looking at her, wondering if she was alive. That's God's my witness, because I didn't see or hear her moving. And then she stayed asleep for so long. I remember that. I remember, I've always been a night owl. So I remember just walking around in the apartment early, 3, 4 o'clock. And, just kind of being lonely, so I would wake my brother up by either, plopping down in the bed or making kind of noise to kind of, and he might, roll over like, what time is it? And I'd be like, man. And I would lie about the time. I would say like 6 or something, because we would watch, certain shows together, Sesame Street and Romper Room and stuff like that, Great Space Coaster. So, he would get up and we would watch it together. My life, my mother did not work. She was on welfare as long as I remember. So we really never really had a lot. We, had grits. I remember we had grits, we had eggs, and the eggs often were this box that, came from like a welfare place or something like that, or, free food. It was like powdered eggs. So we had that, we had grits, we had peanut butter. And because we lived around family, we weren't starving or anything, my grandmother cooked a lot. One of my aunts, that's what she did. And to this day, she cooks, and when we were younger, she cooked for everybody. Everybody would go over to her apartment. Everybody would enjoy her cooking. And then when they would get together, we have little gatherings, Thanksgiving and stuff like that. Everybody had a specialty. So, and I remember on weekends, my father would have us. But my mother drank a lot, and so my father eventually took us into his possession, and we lived with him. And, he was Muslim. He was practicing at the time. He was pretty strict, pretty serious, but loving. He was loving. He, always educated us. He always gave us knowledge, because, like I said, he was in the Nation of Islam. So he, used to learn a lot, and then he would offer that, history, just life. He loved nature, so he would often talk about nature. And he was a hard worker. I think at the time when we lived with him, we stayed in the area not too far away, around the corner, which was like, I think Naylor Road for a second. And we moved, he moved to Falls Church. So when he moved, got involved with another lady who was my stepmother. They got married and had 3 children. And we loved it. I mean, I remember that more than anything, when I was a kid. So I remember just kind of, enjoying that peace. We had a decent little, I think it was a townhouse, upstairs and downstairs in Falls Church. It wasn't for long. We went to elementary school. My father used to drive a bus for handicapped people. He used to drink a little bit, beer. But him and my stepmother, they would argue from time to time. They would disagree. And she would leave, and, she would come back, she would leave, she would come back. Never left for a long period of time, usually a day or two. And I never really knew who was to blame, who was at fault. We would hear the arguing at a distance. Sometimes, me and my brother would creep out and try to listen to what they were arguing about. We never really could discern much of it. They weren't excessively loud, but, the result was she walked out and he would be sitting in this chair, and he would kind of just be a bit quiet, for a day or two until, she came back, and then everything seemed back to normal. I remember my little brothers, man, we used to have a ball. I remember one of my little brothers, man, he could outrun me. I was always kind of a larger guy. I have pictures where I was small at one time, but I was always larger, than my brother. So, but my little brother was young. This man was like lightning fast. He used to enjoy racing because he could beat me. And I was wondering why he was faster than me. So I would just be like, no, I'm not racing today. And, you know, of course, adults, well, y'all racing. So, you know, we were racing, he would outrun me, you know. But, you know, I had a lot of, you know, good memories at that time. We moved from there. We moved to Arlington, a place called Halls Hill, which, you know, black community. You know, we had a lot of family, some cousins at the top of the hill, some cousins at the bottom of the hill. And so we stayed there, but we only stayed there for like maybe 2 or 3 months. And then, you know, my brother and I, my older brother and I, we would go spend time with my mother. And it was a great contrast because at the time my father worked. But then, like I said, my mother didn't work. So, you know, he would buy us clothes and stuff like that. And we would go over there and she would still drink a little bit, you know, and her and my stepfather, they were on and off. I only say stepfather, he's my youngest brother's father. And they had been together on and off for a very long time. They were never legally married though. But you know, he was a fairly decent guy. He used to drink a lot as well. But he was, you know, he was a vet. And a good man, you know, for the most part, at least to us when we were young. He would, you know, take us to the store, buy us a couple, you know, he bought us some coats one time. And, you know, he wasn't ignoring us. You know, he cared and loved my mother. But they never lived together. They never got married. They never found that space to be together. So we would go over there, stay with her, went to school. And, you know, we stayed with her for more than 5 or 6 months. Then we go back to my father. And so, you know, fast forward him, you know, my stepmother, we had moved down to a place in Maryland, in a wooded area, real deep woods, in the Calvert County area. And we moved down there. My father and some family and friends, they had their own business. They make picnic tables. They were painters, carpenters. So they had their own business. And they were good at what they did, handymen, craftsmen. And we enjoyed that. We didn't really like being that deep in Maryland. You know, we're used to being around the projects where we had, you know, people that we ran with, friends and family, little cousins and whatnot, older cousins. And we were used to that. We were down there in the woods. I'm talking about, man, lizards were everywhere. Frogs. I didn't have a problem with nature. I love nature. You know, you see mice and rats in DC, you know, so I didn't have a problem with crickets, frogs. And, you know, at night, it's loud. Like in the city, it's loud. You hear cars zooming down the streets. You hear people kind of talking loud in the neighborhood, you know. Nah, where we lived, it was loud, but it was animals. It was crickets. It was grasshoppers. It was a bird that used to make noise at night. I'm like, I thought birds would sleep. I didn't see them at night. I'm like, where do birds go? I mean, they had nests, you know. I don't want to sound like an idiot, but, you know, I used to wonder, because in the day you see them all the time, but at night they were quiet, but it was always this one bird at night. I think it was called a whippoorwill. We used to hear it. So, you know, we would walk and explore the land, and, you know, sometimes we would be bored because, again, we were used to that fast pace, ripping and running. You know, in DC, we were young in Shipley Terrace and Parkland and these neighborhoods. My grandfather and them lived in Trenton Park. My grandmother lived up on Barnaby Street, which is by a neighborhood that used to be called the Valley, Valley Green. So we were used to running in these neighborhoods, just kind of ripping and running and catching bumblebees in jars and lightning bugs and stuff like that. But in Maryland, it was kind of like this bland, you know. It was boring for a second. Then we just made the most of it. We used to climb pine trees, and I never liked heights. So, you know, again, one of my younger brothers, this man climbed to the top of a pine tree, had to be 100 feet tall. I'm talking about, I'm scared the tree limb is gonna break. He's way up there. I'm like, man, come on down, man. You know what I'm saying? He just gone, you know, fearless. We used to catch turtles. We noticed that every time it rained, turtles were always coming out. So we catch turtles, we put them in these big rabbit cages we had. We keep them and feed them. Then we let them out. You know, we had, like, say, plenty of land, like 18, 20 acres of kind of flat land, and in woods and streams in the woods. We used to catch snakes. You know, I done caught a little green snake one time. I put a stick on his head, caught him. You know, he wrapped himself around my arm, took him to my father, showed him, you know, and my father was always an animal lover. So he was like, you better feed it. You know, so we put it in a little cage and unwrap it and then let it go eventually. You know, it was beautiful though. It was beautiful. You know, our cousins used to come down and see us all the time. And like every other weekend, and we couldn't wait, to be honest with you, you know. So we, like I said, that was our thing, exploring, finding blackberry trees or bushes, apple trees. Well, we had a couple apple trees around us, and we would just walk, ride our bicycles, and just explore, you know. And it was a beautiful thing. And my father would make sure we go back and saw my mother, my biological mother. We would spend the weekend with her, or the week. And it was the same thing. My family over there, we had a ball. We would rip and run. You know, they would drink, and you know, they you know, one of my uncles, man, he was always a big influence. You know, I always looked up to him. He was one of the 4 guys I looked up to. You know, my father, my cousin that's a little older than my father, a friend of the family that grew up with my cousin and my father, and my uncle. You know, like those 4 guys, man, I looked up to for different reasons, you know, different reasons. And my uncle, this particular uncle, was a street guy. You know, he was known for fighting. He was good with his hands. A lot of people in Southeast knew him, and a few other spots in DC. And he was known. You know, he was pretty known. But he always loved family. He loved us. You know, so he would pick us up. He would take us around. I remember during a Halloween, he would walk us around different neighborhoods, and everybody would see him and see us coming. He would tell us, man, no candy. Give him money. Give him money. Don't give him no candy. Give him that money. And we came back home with like $500. We didn't really know the amount of money we had except when he started counting. And he gave us all ones. So we had like 33 ones, each of my brother and I, and I think one of my younger cousins. He kept the rest. And my mother said, she's like, what you doing with all that money? What you gonna do with that? He said, y'all good, right? And we were looking at a stack of ones. We're like, yeah, we happy. We didn't know that he had like a couple hundred, you know, so, but we had that. But there was dysfunction in that. And what was the dysfunction? By the time I was 15, I'd been to 13 different schools. 13 different schools. I had lived, of course, with my father, my stepmother, my biological mother. And it was always different places we lived in. We never lived in the same place for a long period of time. So friends became family. Friends weren't, you know, I didn't have lifelong friends. And my tale is the tale of many people, you know, so I'm not making it look like, oh, what was me? Things were hard, especially, like I say, you know, just the bouncing around. That becomes real tedious to a child. You know, you form a friend in school, you know, 3 months, you know, after y'all form a bond, you're moving, you know, and you don't have the wherewithal to drive over there to visit them. So you try to make new friends. Like I say, family worked, but they drank. You know, they drank. There were fights, not usually within, you know, arguments with each other that, you know, when I was coming up, you didn't really see people arguing, not in my family, with each other all the time. You know, but you saw, you know, disagreements. You would know it because there was a quietness among, you know, those aunts or those uncles, or, you know, you would see that there was something, but it was never so exaggerated. You know, so as we stayed down Maryland, you know, we enjoyed it again, went to school down there. We enjoyed it. And this is where things begin to change. My father and my stepmother, you know, they were having issues, and we could see it sometime, you know, and I won't get into the reasons because I really don't know, you know, from an adult's perspective. It could be anything. The woman will say, well, the man was this, the man was that. And the man would say the woman was this, the woman was that. So I don't want to choose sides, even to this day, you know, but they were having issues. And I have my own perspective, you know, but that's not really important at the moment. They eventually got a divorce. And I remember the day clearly. You know, it was a hard day, man, because we were there to see my grandmother. We had came back from Maryland. We came to Arlington. And we were with my grandmother, my step-grandmother. And I don't like them terminology step because, you know, when we family. That's my perspective. My brothers, I don't have no whole brothers, no half brothers. You know, they my family. They my blood. And that's how I feel. And anybody that knows me, I'm serious about my kin. I love my kin because through it all, people have come and people have gone. But kin was always close by. And so that's how my father raised me. That's how my uncles and them raised me. You know, that's how I was raised. You know, so I can have a problem with one of my family members today. I still love them. I still want the best for them. I still gonna miss them. and we may not always agree. You may not always agree with your clan. If your reason is sound, okay, then you may need some space and some distance and some time. But if your reason is hollow, then get over your pride, learn the value of an apology, and continue to forge ahead, man. People are dying. We're living in the time, as I record these, of COVID. Man, people are dying left and right. Man, I mean, people are dying, and in history, we didn't live through what they call the bubonic plague. We didn't live through yellow fever. We didn't live through these treacherous diseases, smallpox, even Ebola. That thing rears its ugly head somewhere in Africa, kills anywhere from 200 to 2,000 people in the course of a month in the same village. A terrible death, so we don't have to deal with that over here, but we have the flu and people die of the flu. We have pneumonia, people die of pneumonia, but COVID, treacherous. So, like I say, I'm continuing to grow every day. But it's not always easy because we're living in a time where people aren't being raised to really respect one another. People aren't being raised to have adult conversations. It's either you listen to my perspective, my opinion, and that's law. If you don't listen, let's ball our fist up and fight, or let's not talk for years. Like, this is insanity. This is insanity, and this is PTSD. This is generational curses that continuously plague us as humans and as people because we're watching television, we're listening to songs that don't speak to unifying the hearts and the minds of people. Nah, we're listening to division all day. We're listening to, honestly, just trifling behavior and watching trifling behavior. And I'm not judging because, some things are entertaining, so we watch it. But while we're watching, we're sponges and humans absorb. So as we absorb, we have to ask ourselves, what are we soaked in? If we're sponges, what are we soaked in? And then when squeezed, what comes out of us? That was a sidebar. Pardon me. Like I say, I'm going to go into more in my next video. But after the divorce, the day we were going to see my grandmother, she was in a hospital in DC, a rehab, and my father couldn't see her. The visiting hours were messed up. He was working on his car, and he told me to, go get your mom, my stepmother, and nah, she didn't come, and she was like, nah, and there was words, and it was just me and my older brother in the car with my father going back to Maryland, and my mom and my younger brothers and my sister, they stayed, man. And that was probably one of the longest rides in my life and one of the most painful days in my life. And so, it's still weighty because, and that was a great division. And, it seemed like life just turned sour after that. Life went downhill. And I'll speak on that in my next video. So I appreciate you all following me. I appreciate you all's comments. I appreciate you all's support. Your words are encouraging. You really do motivate me. Like I said, I'm not doing this for any fame, any glory, any money, any of that. Truthfully, like I say, I made a lot of mistakes in my life, and those mistakes haunted me. They weighed heavy on me. I watched the consequences of my mistakes. To this day, I don't even understand all of the consequences. I just know that many of the mistakes I made had, severe and weighty consequences. So I owe. That's simple to me, man. I owe. People will say I don't, but I know I do. And so I use my life experience as best I can as fuel to push me forward in hopes of helping and assisting others. So again, I truly thank you all. You all, continue to strive, continue to dig deep, continue to, if nothing else, assess ourselves. Let us look in that mirror more than we look at others. Let us look in that mirror more and ask ourselves, what can we do to improve ourselves? And with that said, please have a good day. Please make your moment and take care of yourselves. Take care of the ones you love. Peace.